Hi guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to talk about some camber link settings that maybe you haven't tried. So quite often we kind of lower camber link positions, shorten camber links, things like that. But today I'm going to talk about moving the entire link together. And you might think, what does that achieve? But there's two quite cool things that you can do when moving the entire link itself. So let's get straight into it. The first thing that you can do is move the entire camber link up or down. So, for example, you've got your link, it's got an angle to the arm, you want to keep that angle, but you're going to add 2mm on the inside and outside and lift the entire link up. Now, a lot of people have asked me before, like, what happens when, say, I add 2mm on the outside and on the inside? Because say they're trying to copy someone's setup and they think it's the same amount of space as each end, it's just that my whole link is higher or lower. Will that make a difference? And the answer is, it will actually make a difference. So, what does it do when you lift up the whole link? Well, the way that the roll centers work out on these cars, if you lift up the whole link, it will still lower the roll center a little bit. So, if you raise up the whole link, it will kind of be like adding spaces under here, slightly, but probably nowhere near as much. So lifting this whole thing up maybe 2 or 3mm might be like adding 1mm under there. I don't know, I've just made that up, but it's probably much less of a difference lifting that up to just adding under there. But it does raise the roll center a little bit. The other thing that it does is that it actually reduces the amount of force in the link and the arm together. So what happens when you're in a corner? You've got a force at the bottom of your tyre. If that's the outside tyre, that tyre is getting forced there at the bottom. And the reaction of that is that the lower arm is getting compressed. And because the tyre is trying to rotate around that lower arm, the top link is under tension. It's trying to be pulled apart. And when there's force in those sort of the arm and the link, that kind of, that's going to have an effect on the chassis and how it moves and rolls and kind of the stiffness in the chassis. So that's the two effects that it has when you lift the link up. Slight lowering of the roll center and a reduction in force in the link and the arm. But now on to the kind of interesting thing. What does it do when you're driving around the track? What's the difference in feel? Well, to me, if you raise the link at one end, that end is just going to feel a little bit softer and kind of less grabby, but maybe just a little bit more prone to sort of just roll as well. So say you soften the front end, or say you lift the link at the front end, it's probably going to feel like the car's slightly less darty, will probably roll a little bit more, and just be a little bit more forgiving on kind of joins and transitions, but you will lose a little bit of response. And the same with the rear. If you raise that link up at the back, your car's going to roll around a little bit more, be a bit less taut and sort of stiff, but be a bit more compliant on features and things like that. If you go the other way, you might be on a day where the track's a little bit slippy and your car just feels a little bit lazy and like it's wallowy, doesn't want to grip up and go. You could lower the links all round and that's going to give you some reaction into the corner, keep the rear end stiff, keep the car gripped up and sort of taut, ready to drive out of the corners, through the corners, things like that. So what is the other way that you can move the whole link on your car? Well, we've moved it up and down. You can also move it in and out. So what does that change? Well, it doesn't affect the roll center position as the car sits statically. It affects the migration of the roll centers a little bit, but I think the main thing that it changes is how the force in the link acts on the chassis, the point at which that's pulling on the chassis, and that kind of just changes how the car acts. So if we look at the front of this car now, we've got these two camber links. As the car rolls, you can see that those links at the inside change height. So the outside link drops down and the inside link lifts up. If we were to move those points further out, when the car rolls, you can see that the change in height is more than it was before. The outside link's going to drop more and the inside link's going to raise more. So, like I said earlier, these upper links, these are in tension as the car's in the corner. They're trying to be pulled apart. So they're pulling on the chassis. And when that pull comes from a lower position and a wider position, that kind of just provides more stiffness to that end of the car. It kind of tries to pull the chassis back flat again and almost hold the car up in a way. So that is the main effect that it has. And again, what does that feel like on the track? So, front of the car. If you move the whole link out, what are you going to get? It's basically going to stiffen up the front of the car, particularly when the car is rolled, which is usually when you're under a lot of load. So think of a corner like the end of the straight, flying into a corner on full lock, something like that. At those moments in time, the front end of the car acts like it's stiffer. It basically stays flatter, is a little bit smoother steering, and yeah, understeers a little bit more, doesn't grab in as much. The opposite is true if you move the whole link in. On those moments where you're under high load, your car's going to dive a lot more, turn a lot more, which can be useful in some scenarios. On the rear, what are you going to get? Same thing, you move the rear link out, the rear end of the car basically gets stiffer in the corners as your car's rolled over. And usually that manifests itself as your car rotates more off power, and quite often on power feels like it squares up better and drives in a straighter line. You can get issues on carpet where the back wheel starts to come off the ground a little bit more because it's stiffer, things like that, going into the corners. So it kind of acts in a way like having a stiffer roll bar, it feels like. But thinking about that, it can be good outdoors. So say you're on a bumpy condition, something like that. Quite often we run the links outdoors because it can provide stiffness and really reduce the chassis roll of the car without having to run roll bars or something like that, which obviously connect the two sides and can make the car worse on the bumps. So it's one of those things that you can really play with. Yeah, obviously if you move the two together, you move the rear link out and the front link out together, your whole car is basically just going to roll less. It doesn't roll anywhere near as far, stays a lot flatter. The only issues that you can get with that is it does make the car kind of feel stiffer, so it can feel a little bit more darty, things like that, where it's just not going to be as compliant sometimes, obviously, because it's just sort of got that stiffer geometry in the corners. So that's pretty much it. That's all the ways of moving your camber link up, out, things like that, what it does. Check out our website below. And yeah, we're thinking of doing some shorts as well, just of kind of things that are a bit quick for a full video, things like just how to set your ride height, how to set your camber, just how-tos, things like that. So let us know if you want to see those in the comments down below, and we'll see you in the next one.